Hey folks, Doc here. Holy crap, have I been busy. I apologize that I haven't turned out any videos in the last few weeks. I've been just insanely busy. My full-time job has been keeping me busy, absolutely full-time, and then I've been going home in the evenings and doing home renovation and stuff, and my weekends have been getting chewed up in the whole shooting match. I really haven't done any wrenching at all. I mean, Commando was still covered in mud from that romp a few weeks ago. All good. Anyways, things are starting to settle down again, so I'm hoping that very soon I can start doing some stuff again, start cranking out some videos a little bit more frequently. Again, I'd like to achieve one a week if possible. I was starting to get on that and things got stupid. In the meantime, I made an interesting recent acquisition that I'd like to show you today. Sometimes there is just no substitute for driving along one day and just seeing some crap at the side of the road with a for sale sign hanging off it. And a week ago, I did such a thing. I was driving along the road nearby, about a kilometer and a half, that's about a mile from home, and this guy had a tractor. No, I didn't buy a tractor, I'm sorry to disappoint you. He had a Cool Guard, like a full-size agricultural tractor, which, you know, didn't interest me for what it was and the budget that obviously it was going to cost. And he had some other interesting stuff there, so I decided to have a look and inquire. And indeed, I made a deal, because when I realized what I was looking at and the potential therein, 20 bucks seemed like a hell of a good deal to me. Here's what I got for that 20 bucks. Now, with the tree overhead, obviously the lighting is doing things and there's shadow and stuff, but what you're looking at here, there's the pedals, is a hydraulic lift table. That platform is approximately 24 by 12, so that's a foot by 2 feet, and it's got a hydraulic power pack and a couple of pedals. So, after doing some screwing around, that's what we have. We have what is going to become my shop mower lift. That's right, I'm going to use that for lifting mowers and go-karts and stuff like that off the shop floor. Sure as hell beats using a jack. And I'm going to use that to service my machines. Yes, I got this for 20 bucks. Did I get it as you see it, functioning for 20 bucks? No, not quite. Let's go over what I did with it, or to it. Actually, I beat the crap out of it. Okay, so first and foremost, you can see that there's a little bit of rust pitting and stuff on the end of the ram here, and I've already actually cleaned most of that up. There was a fair bit more pitting. I don't know if you can see it in the video. You can kind of see the little bits and spits, and I'm still going to clean it up a little bit more. Now, if anybody's wondering what method I use for cleaning up such things, I like to use a piece of ultra-fine steel wool. Here's a piece here. I think it's like quadruple zero ultra fine, and just wet it with some oil and just do that. Now, I'm not going to do it right now because I don't have any oil on it, but I find it helps, and it really cleans these things up. I've done that on motorcycle forks and things like that before with good results. So back at her, zoomed out a little bit here, you can see the hydraulic power pack. On the right hand side is the motor. That's 120 volt, and then there's the pump there, and then there's a reservoir here, so that's where the fluid is, and of course the ram. So when I got this thing, the very first thing that happened after I plugged it in was I blew a hydraulic line. Now, these old lines are very old and very rigid. They're not flexible at all anymore. The other one was in worse shape. There's actually supposed to be 2 lines here. So the line comes off the pump, and it's supposed to go to this bulkhead fitting on the frame, and then another line goes from the bulkhead fitting to the ram. See if I can get in there. Yeah, right there. To this thing, this little gizmo here, this little valve body here. Now, that line blew off, and I've got a good friend of mine, Danner Morgan, who is local to me, a good dude, and he's also an administrator on the Made Mud Mowers page. He's making me up some new hydraulic lines. I owe you one. Thanks, man. Anyways, so for the purpose of just trying to make sure everything worked, I took the short line off that bulkhead fitting and I connected it directly to the pump. So obviously this line is way too short for what it's supposed to be, and with me operating the scissor, it's going up and down, the line's moving all over the place, it's under threat of getting pinched, and it's only temporary. The other problem that I had, more or less immediately, was each one of these pivots was completely seized up. When I brought the platform home, it was stuck in the up position. It had been so for a very, very long time. And even with all the fluid lines disconnected and me jumping up on top of the platform, jump, 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 it would not move. So I spent the last couple of days soaking the hell out of them with penetrant. And then early this morning, I was pounding the crap out of them with a BFH until it looked like they were starting to loosen up. And sure as shite, we're free and good to go. The other issue that I faced once I got, the temporary hydraulic arrangement going on, and once I was able to determine that the platform was physically capable of moving and not jammed, I got it to raise up to full height very nicely, and it stayed there. And when I touched the up switch, the motor came on and it pumped, and when I touched the down switch, nothing happened. So I was just about to rip into the switch and try and figure out what was wrong with the switch when I determined that I had kind of misdiagnosed things. I had thought that because it was a single acting ram, the pump would run in one direction and blow the fluid into the ram and push the piston and make the platform raise. And if you push the down switch, it would evacuate the fluid and send it back to the reservoir. And the fact that the pump was not running with the down switch actuated had me thinking there was something wrong with the switch. I realized I was wrong quite by accident. I was leaning on it and fiddling with the switches, and it started to go down just a wee little bit when I pushed on the down switch. And I determined that the down switch does not actuate the motor at all. It actuates a little solenoid valve. I'll show you what I mean. This here is a little solenoid valve on the end of the pump. And it would seem to be that with everything in a static position, this valve is closed and it doesn't allow anything to happen. When you push on the down switch, this allows a fluid bypass. So essentially what's happening is when you push the down switch, all you're doing is opening a valve and letting gravity push the platform down, evacuate the fluid from the ram, and allow it to go back in. And I didn't determine that early on. And it's still hard to determine that because with these pivots still a little bit rusted up, pushing the down switch, yeah, you see it didn't hardly move. Doesn't really make it do a hell of a lot because of the fact that, the pivots are still a little bit rusty, so it's fighting gravity. But let me tripod the camera. This time I'll put some weight on it. Like me. And pushing the down switch. Bang, down. Pretty quiet too. So, for 20 bucks, I definitely did not go wrong. A couple of new hydraulic lines, maybe some paint, some grease. I'm going to wind up driving as many of those pivots I can out and actually re-greasing them. That'll be good. The other thing I noticed is that the upper limit switch, which is right here, is missing the top portion of it. So when this metal tab here comes into what should be contact with the switch to cut power to the motor when it reaches its upper limit of travel, is not happening. And I've tested that manually to make sure the switch is good. Well, the switch is good, but because the upper portion of it, the actual contacting part, is gone, obviously it's not cutting power. So I've got to keep an eye on that, and I'm probably going to replace that limit switch. The one other thing that's worth noticing here is this nylon tube. And it comes from the top fitting of the ram, and it goes back to the reservoir. And as you can see, it's in horrible shape. It's all kinked and broke. Oh, look at that. It broke. Yay. Anyways, I'm not a hydraulics guy. Here's the only thing I can figure with that. What I figure with that tube is that any fluid that manages to seep past the rings, any fluid that manages to seep past the cylinder and wind up on the top half of the ram, can just ultimately get pushed back and work its way back into the reservoir. I think from a functional perspective, a vent would do just right then and there. However, if that was blocked completely, then I think ultimately any fluid that makes it past there could wind up creating kind of a hydrolock, and then it wouldn't reach full extension. That's my theory anyways. Now, This little valve is interesting. I was playing with that. I have no idea what exactly this all is. Almost looks like a filter housing. Anyways, this little valve here is kind of interesting. I thought that its main purpose was basically like a safety, right? You raise the platform, you lock that valve, fluid cannot pass, therefore, you know, it can't go anywhere. And it looks like I was kind of half right and kind of half not. And here's what I've noticed that's very interesting. If you close the valve completely, the platform will not drop when you hit the down button. It doesn't go anywhere, and for that it works nicely as a safety. With the valve partially closed, you can literally dial the speed at which the platform retracts. So, I mean, the switch is digital for argument's sake. You push the switch, it's either lowering or not lowering. There's no control of the rate of descent. With the valve open, the platform drops pretty fast. With the valve partially closed, it drops more slowly and in a more controlled fashion. Now here's the interesting bit. I don't know why this would be, but for some weird reason that valve only works in one direction. I can have that valve fully closed and the platform still raises just fine. It just won't go down. Having the valve partially open, or partially closed as the case may be, does not seem to change the speed at which it raises. So that valve, that manual control valve, only actually does anything in one direction, so it's kind of like got a check valve sort of operation to it. It's a one-directional thing, so that's kind of cool. So my end game with this thing, after replacing a couple of hydraulic hoses, greasing some stuff up, maybe blowing some paint on it, is to cut a hole out in the floor of the shop to the tune of, you know, a foot and change by 2 feet and change, and sinking this thing right in so with the platform retracted is flush with the floor. I can drive a mower or a go-kart or whatever right over top of it, hit the switch, up we go, and I'm not screwing around with jacks anymore, which sounds like a fantastic friggin' idea to me. So that basically is what I've been up to lately. And again, I apologize for not cranking out any videos recently. I have been exceptionally busy, you know, burning the candle at both ends, and then I lit it in the middle, and you know what happens there. Anyways, I will be getting back into it shortly. I'm going to be, you know, hopefully addressing this thing soon. I'm going to be getting back into the diesel weasel shortly. I've picked up some more parts. Commando's going to get power washed, and some other stuff's going to get done to it. And I'm going to be dragging out some old projects out of mothball to get them rolling again, because, you know, frankly, they've been lonely and crying, and when I close my eyes late at night, I can actually hear them sobbing quietly off in the distance. Anyways, in the meantime, thanks once again for tuning into Sprocket's Garage on YouTube and subscribing and sharing. And until next time, take care of yourself.